Hi, I'm Nico, welcome back to the channel. Today's video has to do with contact sheets. If you're not familiar, this is a contact sheet. It's a sheet of photographic paper that has every frame from one roll of film printed life size. Normally we use these sheets to see our negative pictures as positives and allow us with a loop to choose the frame we want to enlarge or print or scan. But what about a contact sheet in itself as an art object? What if you could get every frame in the roll looking good enough that the sheets could be kept as is and framed or hung or enlarged to make a bigger art object? This week's project was inspired by the work of Marc Upton, who is a photographer in Paris and who I found on an article online. I will link it. And you can see that he shoots his pictures with the idea of using the whole contact sheet. So every picture has to be unique. He doesn't do duplicates or repetition. And he shoots a whole story in 16 frames. So I was inspired to completely plagiarize this idea, thank you Mark, and do the same thing last weekend at my friend's cottage. If you've been following the channel for a while, you know that we have been to this place before in last spring. So this time I wanted to shoot something different, something a bit more conceptual, and I wanted possibly to have a physical object in the end to give to my friend as a token of my gratitude for being invited there 2 years in a row. So I'm calling my project The Spirit of Place, and the idea is going to be to use those 12 frames from my Hasselblad to capture the spirit of this cottage and make something that maybe will have sentimental value for my friend. So how do I plan such a project? I mentioned Marc Upton. The first step for me is inspiration. So I looked for artists who will use the contact sheet as an art object in itself. I found Marc's work, obviously. I also knew about William Klein, who has a very famous series of painted contact sheets. Typically, he uses 2 to 4 frames, not the whole sheet, and he enlarges them and paints over. So it's very appealing, it's very good looking work. This is something in the back of my mind, but I'm really hoping to get the 12 frame looking good and working coherently, so I hope I won't have to do a William Klein and cut my contact sheet and paint over it to make it more interesting. That was for my inspiration. Then there's the choice of gear. The Hasselblad 503 is my only medium format camera at the moment, so that was an easy choice. And the 80mm lens was also an easy choice. Why? Because if I used my 40 or my 50mm, the prints are so small that you would have to have your nose to the print, and still you couldn't really make out any detail with a 40 or a 50mm because they are such wide angle. The details would be tiny on the contact sheet. And why not something longer than the 80? Because my 150 or my 180 are really long to use inside, and they would have made every picture kind of look the same and have the same perspective, because in a tiny cottage there's not so much you can do with longer lenses besides the same detail shots at the same magnification over and over again. So I settled for the 80mm on the Hasselblad. I have to think that in this camera the film goes from top to bottom in the back, which means that frame number 1 ends up at the bottom of the strip. It goes like this: frame 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, etc. So I have to keep that in mind. I'm not looking to do a really narrative sequence. It's not going to be like the whole story, but if from one frame to the next there is a narrative connection, like I start far away from something and I get closer, I need to remember to shoot the closer thing first, so it ends up on the bottom of the strip and not on top. As for my film of choice, because this project has to do with nostalgia and emotion and remembering a place that people know very well, I chose color film to get close to the snapshot aesthetic and to have a connection with the pictures of this place that maybe these people know and have in their mind already. I feel like doing black and white would have been too abstract and too nostalgic, and maybe betray more that I'm a stranger looking at their space. I felt like color would get me closer emotionally. So that's my inspiration and my choice of gear, and then it's my conceptual work on the project, or my choice of themes. And for this, I like to use a notebook. I like to write down ideas. I find that some of this work has to be done ahead of time, at least for me. I like to find my visual metaphors, like how do I express this feeling, this emotion. It's stuff that I can't always find on the field, unless I'm really focused. But when I'm going somewhere to spend the weekend and have fun, I want all that conceptual work to already be in there, so I can be in the moment and not really like spend all day really focusing on what I'm shooting. So what I've written down in with respect to nostalgia and emotion and the spirit of place, which is the name of this project for me. Shooting in golden hour, obviously. Shooting details and close-up, because I think the way you experience a place and the way you remember it has more to do with details and objects rather than the wide view of a scene. A wide view has more to do with description, but not so much with experience. The snapshot aesthetic, which I mentioned before, I'm sure this place has been photographed a lot in that aesthetic, so I need to stay in that vein to trigger that nostalgia. Color, like I mentioned, shooting wide open, because I need to isolate and I need to focus on details and really try to avoid painting a picture of the whole room, because it won't be readable on the contact sheet, and I don't think that's how memory and emotion works. I also know that this 80mm at wide aperture at f2.8 will have a nice vignetting and will like focus the eye in the middle of those tiny frames. Then I got more into details of the subjects I think would fit my theme. I wrote the doorway. Remember arriving to your summer cottage and the first day walking through that door. I wrote the beds, the memory of opening your suitcase on the bed the first day of summer. TVs and books, board games, everything you do to spare time when maybe it's raining outside. The view outside the window, which is something I think you should always capture. The memorabilia, like my beautiful collection here. Everyone has stuff that they use to personalize their space, and I think it's interesting to capture that. And so on. So all this you would call my pre-production work, inspiration from other artists, choice of gear, which is dictated by my concepts. Alright, let's look at the pictures then and see how I did on this project. So we begin at the breakfast table on the first morning, and I knew I wanted some pictures of tableware, and this was really nice with a nice yellow theme going on, so I snapped that picture with the 16mm extension ring to get me close enough to that bacon. Next picture is made in the living room, and you can see the light is too contrasty. I'm not going to get anything in the shadows. So what I do is I use the curtains. They cut off about one stop of light, but also they diffuse the light in the room better. So now I can see what's going on in the shadows. Next picture is the one that's going to be the first one on the roll, because it's frame number 3. So it's going to be the top left of the contact sheet. So I want something connected to the doorway, to get the feeling of arriving into the print. Next picture, I knew this one was going to be side by side with the breakfast table picture. The only thing I had to be careful with this one is the reflection in the mirror. You can see that if I move, I see more or less of myself in the mirror. So when I snapped the final picture, I made sure to wear something black and completely fill the mirror with my reflection. Next, I wanted a view out the window, and I wanted to be in the green theme, because this would be side by side with the book picture from earlier. But this green screen just wouldn't work, so instead I went for the windowsill picture. I'm quite disappointed with this one. I didn't get the depth of field I was hoping for, even though I did check with the preview. I shot this at f8, I probably should have been at f16 or f22. Next is a picture in the bathroom. Straightforward, a bit of a graphic geometric theme going on. The only thing I changed before I snapped the shutter is that I raised the curtains to get more of a summery feel to the picture. This next picture is in the hallway. You can see that there's agitation around me and people really wanted to go out, so I felt a rush and I took this picture, which I'm really not happy about. It's my least favorite of the roll. It's really a nothing picture. The next two are happening right next to one another. First, I took a picture of that fireplace with that beautiful glove hanging next to it. And right next to that scene, I found this weird totem, which made the next picture on the roll. That's pretty straightforward. I actually liked it better reversed, as seen in the viewfinder, compared to the version that's on the film. This is frame number 10, but also I knew this would be the last frame on the contact sheet, the bottom right. So I really wanted this scene there because it's a very strong subject. You can see that there's lots of mess because I moved a lot of things from the scene to make it cleaner. I mentioned that this is a conceptual project, not documentary. What does that mean for me is if I say conceptual, it means that I set up to do the project to realize a concept. So the reason for the pictures to exist is to be an expression of the concept, as opposed to documentary, where the reasons for the picture to exist is to document something. So even though these pictures do document this cabin, for me this project is mostly conceptual because they exist to realize this concept, this contact sheet. Next picture, number 11, made in the bedroom I was sleeping in. And I was really attracted to this triple mirror, and you can see I'm playing with the curtains to change the amount of light that different parts of the scenes are getting. And this is the final image. I may have scanned it way too magenta. And the final image on the roll, which will be on the top right of the contact sheet, is just this picture of the chandelier, the light fixture in the kitchen. So here is the contact sheet as it came back from the lab. You can see it here or on your screen. You can see that unfortunately there's too much contrast from frame to frame and even inside some frames. Most importantly, frame number 1, the breakfast table, got completely blown. And there's also a couple that are too dark. Frame number 2, the book table, and frame number 6 in the bathroom. So I don't think this is like, as an object, I don't think this really works to frame or hang or keep as an art object. So what I did is that I scanned this contact sheet, and then in place of some of the frames that didn't work, I used scans. So this is the new composite contact sheet, which is made of mostly scans, but a couple of pictures in there are actually from the original contact sheet. So that's it for the project. It was lots of fun. It was a good way to keep me busy and keep me working during a weekend of leisure. I'm happy how it turned out. I will probably experiment with that a bit further. And I hope this was inspiring to you guys and that you maybe want to try this out yourself. Thanks for tuning in, and talk to you some other time about another topic. Cheers.